Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the 817 podcast. I'm Jimmy here with my co-host EJ. How's your weekend been?
Good, man. The weather, we went to the nature reserve. It's been a while since I've been out there because I forgot I had to sell my soul to the Confederate Parkway and White Settlement to get there. But it was worth it. My dog loved it. Was out. Did you enjoy the weather at all?
Yeah, we went for a walk down the Trinity this morning.
Was it busy?
Actually, no. The
Same
sidewalk was not busy. Dream Park was, but not anything insane.
Nature reserve was quiet. No one was really out there.
For such a miserable May, to have these like 4 days of reset before we get into miserable summer, I was expecting the same thing. I was expecting there to just be like thousands of people flooding the park.
Yep.
But really, it wasn't bad at all.
Yep. Yeah, it's like this next 4 days, it's like how much outside time can I do?
Yeah.
You know, I did all my reading outside, preparing for the pod today.
Might just sleep outside.
Yep. Sleep outside. Work outside, all of it. Well, if it doesn't rain, though. This might have been the only day we get no rain.
Yeah, that's true.
But hey, this May is, this weather's good because people are calling this May the party month for Fort Worth. You see that? This is the party month.
Yeah, it really has been. I mean, I feel like we said last week that Fort Worth has been in the national news a lot recently, and that continued this week with an episode of Good Morning America being taped in the stockyards. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what the actual Good Morning American people's feelings are about Fort Worth. Being that it's usually in New York, and now they had to like come to hang out with us for a couple, days. I wonder what their take was on it. Like their broadcast people, producers, even their anchors.
Yeah, I think Fort Worth's known to put on a pretty good time for production, local and coming in from out of town, with all the great work that the Film Commission and Visit Fort Worth does. I'm sure that this was a huge effort for, Good Morning America was featuring all of Texas and decided to host from Fort Worth. I'm sure that Visit Fort Worth had a ton of partnering and input into that happening. So big kudos to them. I was a little bummed out by the script though.
Oh yeah. The script. Oh, it was painful.
This little town. I was like, what are we? 20,000 people?
Yeah. And it was so bad. I thought they were going to start selling some George Foremans and Bowflexes. I thought it was just bad. I was like, how do I live in this city? Like that little 3-minute video of them selling Fort Worth. I was like, how do I actually live here? What 34-year-old will I share this with and be like, yep, that's the town I want to take my professional career.
Well, and that's what I was thinking about afterwards my first thought was, wow, I'm surprised my mom hasn't texted me about this yet because she watches Good Morning America every morning, except they were in Vancouver, so that's probably why she wasn't watching. And that kind of hit me like, oh, that's much more of Good Morning America's market than the like elder millennial. So I think it definitely fed into the right crowd of people that Good Morning America could potentially target to come to Fort Worth. So maybe once they get here, we can show them that it's not all cowboys.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Fort Worth remains the cowboy gimmick place where people say, I want to feel like a Texan. You do come to Fort Worth to do that. But to come feel like yourself, people don't think Fort Worth is that place because we don't create an agenda or a strategy to actually make Fort Worth a place like Vancouver, where people actually want to live, hang out, eat, and go travel to because it's cool, not because I want to be wearing cowboy boots and at Billy Bob's. That is, a thing you do, but it's not, who you are.
Well, and I appreciate that the signs that they had up behind the production were the inclusivity based signs that
but that was
Fort Worth touts.
But we know that's all garbage.
I know, but at least like that's the I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. They want to sell the cowboy culture is y'all. Y'all means all, whatever it is. They want you to have black cowboys. They want you to have women cowgirls or whatever. But it's all to keep they feel like it's inclusive, but it's really not in real life.
Well, let's get into the news this week. And first, that is that there's some movement on Texas A&M's expansion into Fort Worth, and some documentation around how they anticipate the project will help boost the education system here as well. So, the new downtown A&M campus, or Aggieland North as officials call it, took a major step toward reality May 19th. Inside the Frostbank Tower downtown, the A&M University System Board of Regents solidified its support of its northern expansion. Regents added the Cowtown campus to the system's 5-year capital plan, which means that the project can begin tapping into funds to start its development. That's a big step. That this isn't just something in theory anymore, but there's funding behind this, and it's being hailed as a game changer for Fort Worth. The estimated $350 million project that was unveiled in November, I'm assuming, should have some groundbreaking sometime soon.
Yeah,
I would think that's the next step.
No, it says they're going to start building summer 2023 and finish construction winter 2024. That's pretty fast.
Yeah, for as much as it looks like they're building.
Yeah. But no, I think, there's a lot of kudos around this for Betsy Price and John Goff's efforts to make this happen. So kudos to them. It looks like it came from a phone call 18 months ago to the university. So that's pretty awesome. And also, what I liked about what Goff said, I mean, companies like XTO can come and go. Universities never leave. I think that kind of point is good. And why I also think this is a great move for Texas A&M is because Texas A&M really tries to be an innovation entrepreneurial hub. But when you're in College Station and really the only thriving thing you got is the university,
right?
It's really hard to set that establishment. And I remember they used to try to sell themselves as like some triangle. Like it was like this triangle because they're in the middle of Austin, Houston, and Dallas, Fort Worth. And they're like, oh, we're surrounded by all this population. So this idea that now Texas A&M is actually in a city where now if you're going to recruit MBA students, innovation students, engineering students at the master level, you now have them in more of a what feels like a company, because you're competing against University of Texas, which is in Austin. You're competing against people who are in cities. So this is a big win for A&M as well. And if anything, right, Aggies and Cowtown, that all goes together. So yippee-ki-yay, we're good to go. What's your take on it?
Oh, I agree. It's great. I hope that it will especially demand more investment in our public transit infrastructure.
Absolutely.
I am not mad at all that it's, taking up some parking lots now and turning it into actual usable space and being right off of the TRE station. Like, I think that it is a perfect spot to incorporate more buses, better commuter rail. So I think that the infrastructure will have to develop around it, and hopefully Fort Worth is ready to invest in that as well.
Yeah. It's going to, 10 years from now, that area is going to seem so different, and it's going to feel like a city.
Well, and especially I feel like the campus will operate similarly to like a UT Arlington, where it's much more commuter based than people living on or near campus. And so if we can also connect the rest of the Metroplex easily to that campus, you're keeping a lot of local talent in DFW, you're keeping it specifically in Fort Worth, and you're making it easy for them to get to and from school without having to drive on 30 or 35, like I think that you can really develop that area of downtown well around a young research-based institution if we put the effort into an investment into making that happen.
Yep. And they're partnering with a couple different programs, right? They have the Tarrant County College to establish an engineering academy, which gives local students the chance to earn a Texas A&M engineering degree close to home for a fraction of the cost, and providing some of that experience in different ways. I know they're doing that in multiple different areas. It would be interesting what kind of impact this makes on UTA, University of Texas Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they kind of saw this opportunity first and moved their MBA program down there.
Yeah.
And now, I wonder, but that to me now, I just got excited because I'm thinking, man, you got MBA students from UTA. You got engineers and innovators from A&M. They're having coffee. They're trying to create companies. You have the executive and the engineer, and those are really the two you need to really strike gold and starting something together, right? And then it becomes a side project for both of them. They're doing it in their garage or wherever they're working on it in the coffee shop. That synergy could actually be really promising because now you got MBA kids and engineers all in one place.
Yeah, I agree.
Fun stuff.
Well, speaking of connecting the Metroplex,
Come on now.
the Tarrant Regional Water District and Dallas Water Utility celebrated the opening of a 150-mile pipeline Friday, helping secure the growing region's supply of drinking water. The $2.3 billion project, funded between the two counties and the state, comes at a time when North Texas faces the dual threats of prolonged drought and surging demand for water. As of Tuesday, roughly 81% of Texas was experiencing some level of drought, affecting an estimated 16.6 million people. More than half the state is suffering from extreme or exceptional drought conditions. This is something I haven't seen in the news a ton recently, but Lake Powell in Arizona, where Horseshoe Bend is, super famous national monument, is dry. Like, it's literally gone. And I feel like that's, we're having to look forward and make sure we're being innovative when it comes to water supply for a growing area, especially amidst changing climate conditions.
Yep. Yeah, and if you look at it, they're saying, when you see what Carlos Flores, city council member, said, we're really ahead of the curve with this pipeline, which is interesting because, when it comes to the grid for electricity, it seems like we're behind the curve. So it actually feels good to be ahead of the curve on something. And they talk about it being, he estimates, the project says it will save money for both utilities. Dan Bunman, general manager for the Tarrant district, said that the pipeline will net $1 billion savings in operations and maintenance costs, which I find that interesting.
Got to save that billion to spend it on Fort Worth Club memberships.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So that's super cool. Nothing too big there on the story. Just, I think, an important story for all of us to know. $2.3 billion, 150-mile pipeline connecting Tarrant and Dallas so that if any county is dealing with a shortage, we can rely on one another. So, really cool stuff.
Yeah, and obviously in a growing area like this that as really a lot of the country gets outpriced of being able, like, cost of living wise for housing, like, I think we're going to continue to see a major influx of people to the area. And so being ahead of the curve in this is an exciting thing. Look at us actually highlighting the water district in a positive way.
Come on now.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into one of your favorite topics, and that is short-term rentals in Fort Worth. As a former short-term rental, person, the debate over the short-term rentals took center stage Tuesday as residents lobbied at Fort Worth City Council to crack down on what they called a commercial encroachment on residential neighborhoods. Fort Worth is considering changing its 2018 ordinance, which legally defined what a short-term rental is and prohibited them from operating in residential neighborhoods. They're also looking to spend money on a data mining company to figure out how many rentals we have, what that could look like. Looking at rentals in April, we had nearly 1,600 active rentals on Airbnb and Vrbo, according to AirDNA, short-term rental market. So this article shared two kind of sides of it. Hey, short-term rentals are coming, deal with it, adapt. And others are saying, hey, this is being impacted by businesses coming into our neighborhoods and making our neighborhoods not feel like homes. So what is your thoughts there, and what is anything here updates or changes your perspective?
I thought that Jared Rucker, vice president of the Fort Worth Short-Term Rental Alliance, brought a lot of really great points and was really open, starting a conversation. I think the people speaking against them just kind of fired off the laundry list of sort of made up issues that come along with short-term rentals. Like, oh, it means that there's going to be some raging parties next door all the time. Like, when you travel and stay in an Airbnb, how often are you like throwing some massive party? Like, it's just not a real thing that happens very often. Like, maybe you have the occasional like party that comes in. Mm-hmm. So the people speaking against them, to me, nobody presented anything unique or interesting. It was all very just, the run-of-the-mill hot button topics around them. But I think the idea is like, they're here. The people speaking against them are saying that they want better accountability for them, like the city to crack down better on them. What that means is a ton of manpower going into something that, one, these are probably the same people voting against like extra government spending, quote unquote. They'd probably say they're against big government, quote unquote. But we just have to like work together to find a middle ground that regulates them and also creates money for the city out of this. Like, instead of putting a ton of money into shutting these things down, how about we act like every other big city across the country and basically world and tax these the same way we tax hotel occupancy, generate revenue for the city. And I think it was Atlanta recently just put a new ordinance around limiting to where you could have two. One of them had to be part of your homestead. Yep. They all had to be registered. The city collects fees on all of them. Like, what we're doing now is what allows the rise in cost of rent by limiting the available housing stock, as someone from the Texas Neighborhood Coalition talked about and brought up. Because someone could just come in and buy 30 houses.
Correct.
If they have the money to do that and rent them all out. If we put actual concrete rules around it, then we're fixing these problems instead of just trying to sweep it under the rug. I think both of these parties, the anti short-term rentals and the pro rental association people, can really build collaborativeness, is around what you kind of said that Atlanta did. Is the real problem isn't short-term rentals. The real problem is large businesses buying up neighborhoods, right? I mean, you're seeing that one of every 3 home in Phoenix is purchased by BlackRock, JP Morgan, or one of these iBuyers like Open Door or Zillow, right? And even in Dallas, Open Door, 10% of Open Door purchases is DFW. Yeah.
So when you have these all these people buying stuff just to make business out of something that should be seen as a utility that everyone deserves a home and place to live. And yeah, I think if you could do what Atlanta did, where it's like, yes, your homestead and maybe I'd be okay with 4, maybe, like nothing where it's like a family, someone who's looking to create some passive income, looking to, diversify some of their wealth or whatever. But it's when it comes Wall Street mainstream strategy. And, even cities like Conroe, Texas. I read a crazy story where Conroe, Texas was owned by China. They just bought Conroe, Texas and built hundreds of homes and then sold it to as a project, the whole neighborhood. So it's that's the part is macro purchasing of real estate should be frowned upon the same way merger and acquisitions are for Facebook or Google buying up all their competitors. Yeah, I think it makes even if it's every person in your homestead could have 2, or every person over 18 in your homestead could have 2, so that like husband and wife, you could have 4 as a family type of thing, or 2 partners have 4 total. Creating structure around it is and still tax them and tax them correctly. Tax them the way we tax hotel occupancy, so that it actually drives commerce for the city the way that they can. I don't understand why we would take an asset and try and get rid of it. If I told you that we just wanted to close all of the hotels in Fort Worth, you would look at me like I'm crazy. We're out here talking about how we want to attract people to the area to come visit, to come spend their money and time and vacations. And I'm going to come in and say, no, let's close every place that they can stay. Yep. It literally doesn't make sense. That's the opposite of what we should be doing. So I agree. I'm glad that the conversation is finally happening, because this ordinance was changed in 2018 and really hasn't been touched since then. So pre-2018, it was already against city ordinance to operate a short-term rental in Fort Worth. Then in 2018, they took the next step of further defining what short-term rental meant, to make sure that everybody understood that it meant Airbnb, VRBO, etc. So 4 years in the making, we're finally having the conversation that we should have had 4 or 5 years ago. And the purpose of the city's data mining firm, to find a data mining firm, is to help identify the number of short-term rental properties so that they could really start estimating occupancy taxes for those properties and informing any changes to the city. So to me, the proactiveness of the reason you're looking for a data mining firm is to do that, shows that the direction they're looking to move is just, it's time for us to get money we're not collecting on these properties. Yeah, and let's just napkin math this out. I don't know what $1,600 in April. I don't know what the occupancy tax is in Fort Worth, but let's just say it would come out to $10 a night at these Airbnbs, and that's average across different prices, etc. Hypothetical number, $10. So 6%. 6%. That's huge. Okay, so I think, maybe we're even talking $20. So $150 a night, you're looking at $6 plus another nearly $10, like you said. Yeah, so let's use $10. 1,595 active rentals. Say 1,600 to make it easy. So that's $16,000 a night if every single one was occupied. Multiply that by 365 days. Then I'll say, from our experience, we were occupied 5 years ago 80% of the time. I'm just going to put 50% of the time just to average out across, different occupancy levels. That's $2.9 million that we really don't have to put any money or effort towards to take away for the city. Seems pretty good. And we can move it all to transit. That's right. Come on now. So we're not Ubering around to our Airbnbs.
That's right.
So yeah, we'll keep up with the story, and keep going there. So again, if you're new to the pod, we do 3 short stories and then 1 big story. So let's go ahead and move in the big story, which is obviously tomorrow is voting. We're voting in the runoffs that we had. So we have to decide if, as from a Republican side to if you voted Democrat. The runoff election is now, so who's going to be the main person going against the other party in November? And we got a lot of important different people going against each other. I think the big exciting one, for the Republican side is Ken Paxton and George P. Bush. That one I think is important. A couple others there.
And before we get into exactly what the races will look like, just for clarification, when you voted in, was it February? If you voted in the Republican primary, you can vote in the Republican runoffs. If you voted in the Democratic primary, you can vote in the Democratic runoffs. If you did not vote, you can choose which one you want to vote for. And that's an important point that Bud Kennedy brought up in his editorial, is that 94% of Fort Worth is eligible to vote in the Republican primary, which typically is the deciding contest in Texas state elections.
Maybe that should be the title for this pod. Why you should vote Republican tomorrow. Something like that. I don't know. Because probably most people who listen to this pod don't identify or classify as Republican. So if you can just get 10 people, 20 people who listen to the pod to actually go vote, it's going to be close. Because also Bud Kennedy said only 2% of people have voted of the Republican side. Only 2% people have voted. So usually that means low turnout. The more radical people who got people excited and fired up, Mercy Church to get out.
That's who's going to show up.
That's kind of what happens. So yeah, so the runoff election, looking at it, we kind of went through them last time, but you have Attorney General, like I said, George P. Bush, Ken Paxton on the Democrat side, Rochelle Garcia and Joe Jaworski, Lieutenant Governor Mike Collier, and then Michelle Beckley, Land Commissioner Jay Kleberg and Sandra Grace Martinez, Republican Don Buckingham and Tim Westley, Railroad Commissioner Republican Wayne Christian, Sarah Stogner, State Board of Education District 13, Kathryn Monette and Denise Russell, Texas 24th Congressional District, Derek Gay and Jan McDowell for the Democratic, U.S. Representative District 30, Democrat Jasmine Crockett, Jane Hope Hamilton, Republican James J. Frank Harris, James Rogers, U.S. Representative District 32, Antonio Swad and Justin Webb. Bud also said, which I think Bud's article in the Sunday paper kind of hits why we should vote, but then also it also just kind of talks about we are 4 elections in 16 weeks. Mm-hmm. So people are just tired. People have no idea that things are going on. This is why you have low turnout. But you voted Republican in February. I voted Republican in February. This is so we are voting on the Republican side. And I'm actually excited to, because it really matters. You're picking between crazies and actually Republicans. That's important.
Yeah, I mean, the more extreme candidates that are out there right now are, backed by religious activists or Don Huffines. And Don Huffines had a billboard outside my exit that said, "End property taxes." What is Texas going to do if we end property taxes? Those are not the people that should be running our state or local governments. And so it really is a big deal that we are choosing between, more centered, average Republicans and the they're calling themselves like the MAGA caucus now is
Yeah.
like the national term for them, essentially.
Yeah. So to me, this seems like something like, why shouldn't we do this every year in Texas or every voting year in Texas? Like, vote Republican.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans haven't lost a state or Tarrant County election since 1994. And so until that happens, like, your voice is going to be a little bit more heard if you're voting in one of those elections in the primaries and the runoffs.
Yeah.
And not to say that that means that can't change this year. Like, there's a lot that Governor Abbott is leaving on the table for Beto to go after. Like, the fact that we were concerned about potential rolling blackouts in mid-May, again, it's right there in front of Beto to message to moderates and just average voters who might not typically vote in a midterm election. I would still call it a long shot, but doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
So if you're voting Republican tomorrow, May 24th, I have received tons of mail to tell us who to vote for. So I don't know if you receive mail, but basically they show the Trump back people and they give you who to vote for. So we're just going to go the opposite of this list.
Yeah, it's pretty nice that they send out like, hey, we're going to identify the further right people for you just so that you know.
Yeah. And so the list here, we're going to go down the row here, is for Attorney General. That one's easy. George P. Bush over Ken Paxton. Land Commissioner is Tim Westley. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do we have next?
Railroad Commissioner Sarah Stogner.
Yep.
U.S. Representative District 30, I guess neither of them are extreme enough to get the check mark from this. Yeah.
So, yeah, pick your poison.
They're both named James, too.
Yeah. Then you have the State of Board Education District 13, Kathryn Monette. State Representative District 91, David Lowe. State Representative District 93, Laura Hill.
And this is a big one because Schatzline is the mercy culture guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of the people that they pull up on stage to talk about. So if you're voting in District 93 for state rep, he is that guy.
Yeah. I think this is another one. Criminal District Attorney, Tarrant County, Matt Krause.
Yeah, and Sorrells, I think, reading from Bud's article, basically has no experience for what he's trying to walk into.
Yeah.
It's one of those, if I would have launched a campaign and somehow gotten Donald Trump's endorsement and been in a runoff. Krause is the newbie.
He looks young. I think they're both actually relatively new with experience. But Krause has a more popular name because of previous work doing something. That's what I'm...
Gotcha. But Sorrells is the one endorsed by the far right. And then County Criminal Court number 5, Mamie Johnson. And that's all the Republican runoff races. I feel like on the Democratic side, it's tough to choose too because you're wanting to choose I would think you're wanting to choose the more well-funded person because that's the one who realistically is going to have a slightly better chance come November. So even in a situation where like it's a toss-up between them, if you're getting text from somebody or like if you've gotten calls from somebody or mailers, that's probably an indicator that they're better funded. And even if that's not what like you want to determine your vote on, and I would say that that's a good feeling to have when we're talking about state and Tarrant County elections, funding is going to go the majority of the way in making it slightly competitive.
Yeah, who knows how this is going to turn out? I mean, it seems like my gut and everyone's gut that I talk to that it's going to be far right bonanza.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's when we're looking at 2% to 6% voter turnout.
Yeah,
like Bud says in his editorial, like that favors non-incumbents. It favors people that have a passionate base behind them, and right now that's the extreme.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you at the polls tomorrow.
The other funny thing that came up in election lore this week is Brian Byrd, his reemergence, his editorial.
Flew out the nest.
The race for Tarrant Judge was tough, but it's time for Betsy Price to back Tim O'Hare. I feel like this is Byrd trying to get back at Betsy a little bit for how she acted towards him in the mayoral race, because there are a lot of establishment people that are running from backing Tim O'Hare, and they're not even backing Deborah Peoples like I would say they probably should.
Yeah.
But they're not coming out in support of Tim, which makes a lot of sense. And for Dr. Byrd to come out and put Betsy on blast, saying that it's time for her to do that, I would imagine that there's a phone call or a text headed his way that is not super nice coming from Betsy.
Keep my name out your mouth, Byrd.
This is the time to play the Will Smith clip from Betsy's husband to Brian Byrd.
Yeah.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
Because, I mean, when you look at these conservative flyers that we're receiving, I mean, they're like Donald Trump's face reprinted on top of the people they endorse. It's like Trump's face, Trump's face, Trump's face, Trump face down, Paxton's and all the other ones. And then the ones that are not. And so, like, surely there's this, like, awakening, center to Republican core that's, like, thinking how we're thinking about being, voting. Because you saw some of those people not vote for Trump in the presidential election. Is that people bigger? Like, are there anyone tired of Trump? I don't know. And with us being a purple city, and then Beto going to be on the ballot in November, who's going to bring out a lot of people. If at worst, it just keeps them home, or they don't even vote. They skip that. They just skip it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't even vote for that, like Deborah or Tim O'Hare. Could Deborah pull it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think she has a better chance against Tim O'Hare than she would against Betsy Price, for sure.
And then with the Roe versus Wade stuff happening, with the, I've been having my AC at 40 so the grid can break, so Beto can have a shot. I've been trying to break it. But,
I didn't even need to run my dishwasher, but I ran it twice.
Yeah, just had 3 bowls
during
in there.
Peak hours, yeah.
3 bowls. Use the hot dry setting, too, so it dries it. So, like, yeah, maybe we're being too pessimistic as progressives in Texas, but we'll see how sad the world is here in November. Like, is the end of order going to happen? And we're just like, how do we live in this state? Because they're moving the rug under our feet very blatantly now. And we're just all letting it happen.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah.
Are you ready to move into wins and losses?
Let's make it happen.
I'll start with my loss, and I just was really annoyed looking back through this week's papers. Front page, above the fold. What can our president do about gas prices? Experts weigh in on the president's impact of gas prices. And it's just such an absurd thing. Like, the U.S. has very, very cheap gas relative to everywhere else in the world except for, like, the Middle East that produces a large amount of our gas. But this article basically goes through, and I mean, it feels like it was written by Fort Worth oil companies to just point the finger at anybody but themselves. And like, obviously gas prices going up does suck, but it's not until well down into this article, if you've made it that far, that somebody says, no, the president can't really do anything about gas prices. Then it says, who are some other presidents that have been blamed for gas prices in the past? And it names impeached Richard Nixon, Democrat Jimmy Carter, and New Deal Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Like, what? No other president has ever been blamed for gas prices. We haven't had high gas prices any other time in our history. Like, get out of here. I just thought that this was essentially like a clickbait article, front and center on the like Wednesday paper, and it just bummed me out a little bit. I think that we have a better team behind this than essentially what came across as an editorial that didn't even mention the fact that the biggest oil companies in the United States literally tripled their profits and revenue from last year to their highest of all time, like 3 times their highest, most profitable quarter of all time. And like, that's not even mentioned in here. They're like, we're being price gouged, we're being extorted by gas companies. Come on. Like, that's the headline right there.
Yeah. People who actually could do something about it.
Yeah. People who actually have an influence on this. So, I mean, there was a bill passed in the House this week to try and hold companies accountable. There's no way it's going to pass the Senate. Like, Joe Manchin's not going to sign on to that. But let's actually have a real conversation about gas prices and kind of, grow up, join the rest of the world in understanding that our leader of one country is not responsible for how expensive gas is.
Yeah. My loss is around the city east of us, Dallas, Mayor Eric Johnson. He kind of, called for a second NFL team in Dallas. And I just thought that was such a not smart idea, like a pointless idea. Like that, like advocate for, there's a lot of other things we need to be advocating for in Dallas, So I just thought that like this idea of wanting to have a second team because we're the third largest metro and the other Metro 1 and 2 has 2 teams, New York and LA. Yeah, but New York and LA's metros, New York is 19 million, LA is 13 million, and we're 7.5. They're twice as large as us, if not triple almost for New York. It makes no sense for us to have a second team. And it also makes it difficult because the Dallas Cowboys are technically in Tarrant County. Yeah. And you're not going to not take the Dallas. You're going to put a team in South Dallas, and what are you going to call that team?
Right. Are you going to move the Dallas Cowboys to South Dallas and then call another team the Arlington or Fort Worth or Texas whatevers?
Yeah.
I don't think Jerry's going to just give up his stadium to some other team.
Yeah. And do I think we could Fort Worth have a, something? Maybe like in a different sport, but not the NFL.
And it was just, I think the funniest thing to me was that this wasn't some like offhanded, like joke comment. Like,
he's serious.
This was something he was serious about and sounds like he's had legitimate conversations around. And yeah, the last thing we need is another Jerry Jones coming into the area advocating against a public transit line that connects Cowboy Stadium to the rest of the Metroplex.
And he's mad because, like, oh, Dallas Cowboys are in Frisco and the Rangers are in Arlington. So is Dallas Knights. They don't live there. Your people don't live there. Like,
Yeah.
sorry. Like, we created a city that people don't actually want to be in for their homes and recreation. That's a classic Texas metro density issue. It's all done to y'all, to the Metro's urban planning. And I don't know what to tell you, man. But the Dallas Cowboys are fine. You don't need to add something else to that.
Nobody goes to LA games. Like, if you're going to try and say, like, oh, the first two Metros are thriving, first off, neither of the New York teams play in New York. They play in New Jersey. Then you go to LA. Neither of those two teams have anybody coming to their games.
The Rams probably now.
Well, the Rams have everybody else coming to their games.
Yeah.
Like, visiting teams are coming to see that stadium. So, you don't have fan bases behind them. Like, you think a fan base is just going to start supporting some random not Dallas Cowboys team? Like, Cowboys fans are annoying enough. Like, we do not need something else for them to talk about.
Yeah. So that was my L.
What's your win?
My win, I do like your win better, but my win, I was trying to be nice.
I was surprised that you didn't say that this was going to be.
But it was so, because when I was editing last week's pod, that news came out, so it felt so long ago.
Yeah.
Because we did an early pod last week. But my pod is 70,000 people came to Fort Worth for the PBR World Series Finals, whatever they call it, professional bull riding. 70,000 people showed up to Fort Worth. That's always a good sign. As much as I feel like we have the one Cowboy set up, it works. It works for the people. People love it. There's probably a lot of people who love what Fort Worth is doing, and that just is simply not me. And hey, it's fine.
The stockyards were hopping.
Yeah.
Like, taking Brooke to work and picking her up. Like, there was a noticeable difference in how long it was taking for us to make that trip. Like, there were a lot of people out there.
Yeah, and like, just the testimonies around it's annoying, where it's just like, this is supposed to be a win, by the way, but it's just like how they just preserve the history of the stockyards and all that stuff, and I'm just like, cool. If it makes you happy, wonderful. And I do agree that PBR in Fort Worth makes a lot of sense, because there's nothing more Cowboy than Fort Worth, Texas. So all things Cowboy should be here. And so when Good Morning America says we want to feel like Texas, they come to Fort Worth, because we are Texas, and we should be proud of that.
My win, starkly different, is the Kendrick Lamar music video shooting in Fort Worth. Now, I will say, like, Rolling Stone magazine, this was Fort Worth, not Dallas. Like, Fort Worth Film Commission is listed in the credits, not Dallas Film Commission. You can get that right. There were a few other publications that listed it as Dallas, but the fact that, like, people are going to see that video from a massive album, from a massive artist, look at these incredible backdrops and say, whoa, where is that? How can I go see that? That was an amazing time in the spotlight for the city.
Yeah. And I remember someone, I don't know if I was in a car with them or at a bar, and they were talking about how Kendrick Lamar was in town. And that I was even hearing, like, again, I don't know how true it is, because I was waiting to see what the story was behind it, but supposedly he has an important relative or someone in Fort Worth that lives here. So I don't remember, like, I want to say maybe it was at the Lou Charles Lollapalooza last year or something, where someone was talking to me about it, because this was a long time ago when they recorded it. Mm-hmm. I feel like that was so. But yeah, got tickets for the Kendrick Lamar concert coming up. Great album, super awesome. So yeah.
Is Dickie's too small for him to play?
No,
that'd be dope if
No, I definitely think Dickie's is perfect for him to play. Yeah, I think people, but the kicker is he's not that type of like where if he's going to perform in Dallas, which is already scheduled. I'm going to the one in Houston because I have a wedding the next day in Houston, so I'm going to the one in Houston. But no, I think that should be something we should definitely try to get happen. The thing is, he doesn't really like to tour, or he doesn't tour a lot, and he already has this tour going. So I don't know.
Yeah, but anyways, that was
George Strait's coming a second time though. Yeah. So our man, King of Country.
I mean, that was a crazy thing to see drop, and then all of a sudden it was like
wildfire.
This is all over the internet.
Yeah.
So really, really cool. Great job by Red Productions and everybody involved making that happen. Just another instance of Fort Worth being in the national spotlight for a not white supremacist thing in the past like month and a half. That's been really cool. Yeah. And then this coming weekend is Colonial, so we'll have golf back in town. And then, I mean, I think there's a big Texas Motor Speedway race coming in a couple of weeks. Like, just a lot happening.
Yeah. Feels like Fort Worth forward. So, really exciting stuff. So there you have it. Thank you for listening to the 817 podcast, where we highlight the lovely city of Fort Worth, economics, politics, culture. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe, share with a friend, and it's Memorial Day weekend next weekend, so we're going to not be doing a pod next week, but we'll see you in June. Hopefully there's a lot to share, as I know we're going to have the results from the election, so we'll be able to simmer on that and the scorching heat of Texas.
Yeah, enjoy your long Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you in June.